Welcome all to a very special session of 3-day APEC Smart and Sustainable City Conclave, organized by APEC News Network and hosted by Trivandrum Smart City Limited. For last 2 days, we're having insightful discussions on various aspects of building smart cities, be it waste management, be it water management, be it transport, urban mobility, be it use of innovation and technology for smart cities, be it use of various citizen-centric services by using technology innovation. All this has been discussed for last 2 days, and this is the third and one of the most important session of this conclave. The name of this session is Effective Citizen Engagement Initiatives, Best Practices, Innovation, and Technologies. And for this session, we have got very important speakers from various parts of India who are doing exemplary work in the smart city ecosystem. Let me introduce to all of you. We have with us Mr. Nitin Sangwan, CEO, Ahmedabad Smart City Limited. Thanks for joining us, Mr. Nitin. We're also joined by Dr. Apurva Sharma, Chief Executive Officer, Silvassa Smart City Limited. Thanks a lot, Mr. Apurva Sharma, Dr. Apurva Sharma, for joining us. We're also joined by Mr. Raj Sherubal, CEO, Chennai Smart City Limited. Thanks a lot, Mr. Raj, for joining us today. With this, let me take this opportunity to introduce to all of you Mr. Nitin Sangwan, CEO, Ahmedabad Smart City Limited. Mr. Nitin, my first question to you will be that what kind of initiatives being undertaken by the Smart City in Ahmedabad when it comes to effective citizen engagement using technology and innovation? Your take on that.
So basically, when we talk about citizen engagement, we have tried to touch upon almost every aspect of urban governance, and I would like to start with the citizen complaint and grievance redressal system. So Ahmedabad was one of the first cities in India to have implemented this system. Any citizen can register any complaint on various platforms, like through email, through a dedicated mobile app, or through a dedicated number. And this complaint is tracked in real time. And most recently, we have also introduced a feedback mechanism into that, by which a citizen can, rate the quality of the closure of the complaint, and also provide comments. So that is proving helpful to us also in evaluating what kind of services that we are delivering. And when we talk about the other services that we are delivering to the citizens, we have introduced smart parking system in Ahmedabad, and I believe this is one of the first, and even so far, this is one of the first system and the only system which is working in a big city. Many major events like the Trump Namaste Trump event have been organized through using through the help of this application. And in the upcoming days, we will also be managing the cricket test that is going to happen in Motera Stadium. And there are many other applications also. In the recent times, we have made more than 10 citizen-centric application online. So, like if you have to make a swimming pool application, or you have to book ticket for the flower garden of Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation, or maybe you have to take your birth certificates, or you have to make an application for fire safety certificate, then all of these are available online. So these are major citizen centric initiative that we have taken. Apart from that, our landmark and our major initiatives like automatic vehicle light violation and the chalaning, that system is working perfectly, in a good shape. And it has led to tremendous behavioral change in the city of Ahmedabad. And we have smart lighting, we have smart library that is coming up in say next month. So through these initiatives, we are trying to engage citizens in almost every facet of urban governance as well as citizen service delivery.
Right, Mr. Nitin. Thanks a lot for sharing with us some of the initiatives being undertaken by Ahmedabad Smart City uh, for citizen engagement through innovation and technology. I'll come back to you. Can you have a perspective from Silvassa Smart City Limited, Dr. Apurva Sharma, CEO? What kind of initiatives are being undertaken in your smart city?
Good afternoon. Basically, we when we take undertake any project, any government scheme comes about, it is basically for the citizens. So to engage the citizens at every level makes the entire scheme, entire project more meaningful, more stakeholder driven, and it makes it sustainable. So when we talk about citizen engagement, the most important aspect of citizen engagement is they should have a say in the decision making process. So when we design a particular project, we talk to the citizens. For example, when we had designed our vegetable market, it is basically a roadside vegetable market. Street vendors are sitting on that particular place, and they are selling their goods. So we are wanting to upgrade it into a better infrastructure. For that, we designed a particular the street and everything, and then we went back to the citizens and we spoke to them. We presented the entire design to the stakeholders, and we took their inputs. So that is one very important thing that we are doing, that we're trying to include the citizens at each level of decision making. When we started designing the cycle track, we again went back to our citizens with our design. We engaged the smart city advisory forum, we showed it to all the councillors, and the councillors then they had their certain feedback. We incorporated those feedback, and then we did a pilot. We took feedback from the citizens, we took feedback from the cyclists as to what are the shortcomings, what are the hurdles that they are facing, what are the issues that they are facing, so that we have been able to bring about meaningful change in the projects that we are implementing. So one thing that we are doing, which I would say one of the good practices that we are doing, is that we are engaging the citizens from the time of designing of the project itself, not like we are going to engage them after the project is executed. The second thing that we are doing to engage the citizens is basically the online or the digital means of communication. For digital means of communication, we have the traditional digital means like SMS and emails and all. So that part we are doing. Apart from that, we are engaging with the citizens through social media campaigns. So for social media campaigns, what we have understood through our experience is that we need to have a professional agency to take care of our social media uh, accounts. Everything that goes into a social media account has to be taken care of. For example, the photography that is done, the video editing that is done, the script that is written, which photographs are to be posted. There has to be meaningful inputs from at each level, and that will translate into better outcomes. So people should connect with their cities through the social media means. So they are again, even through social media, we have engaged with people to take inputs on what we are doing and how we are doing, whether people find it to be meaningful or not. For example, we had done tactile intervention at one of the busiest crossroads in Silvassa. So the feedback that we got from citizens was that probably we need to improve the road quality first, and then we need to do this. So we were able to engage with the citizens, and we were able to tell them, see, this is the what is tactile intervention, how is it different from the physical interventions that we do, road improvement and all, and why it is cheap, easy to do, and short gestation period. It has a short gestation period to bring about improvement in the quality of life of the citizens, how it reduces the chances of accidents, how it improves the safety of the pedestrians. So we were able to engage with the citizens. The negative feedback that we received, the criticism that we received, was provided us an opportunity to explain our position, and then that happened to be one of the most talked about thing that we had done. Almost one fourth of the population of Silvassa engaged with our social media post on that particular topic. So that has proved to be pretty effective. Apart from that, like Nitin has already spoken about, similar, we are also doing a customer, the citizen grievance redressal portal we have. On that, the citizens can raise their issues, and those issues are then accordingly flagged and managed. We also have that similar kind of feedback mechanism. Apart from feedback, what extra we have in Silvassa is we also have a star rating for the person who has resolved the complaint. So you can see how effective a person employee is in resolving the issues raised by the citizens. So that helps us motivate us employees to show tangible results, to engage with the citizens, and to actually resolve their issues rather than just closing the complaint. So that is one of the things that we have taken up. Apart from this, for engaging with our cyclist community, we've developed a Fit Silvassa application. So it is part of the Streets for People challenge and also the India Cycles for Change challenge. So under that, what we have done is basically what issues citizens face as cyclists, what are the uh, important announcements that we have to make, competitions are there and rewards are there. So we are engaging with our citizens on a day-to-day basis through the Fit Silvassa application as well. We are also distributing awards. For example, if we want to know how much a person is cycling during the month, so if anybody cycles over 100 kilometers, there's a special award for that, there's a recognition for that. So that has proved to be an important aspect of the cycling change that we are trying to bring about and engaging with the people in that. One important change that we are trying to bring about is to create institutions which are people driven, stakeholder driven. For example, the Fit Silvassa app, if we take the Fit Silvassa app, these usually what happens, these applications are officer driven, these are institution driven, competition driven, or something like that. So once the competition goes away or the officer changes, the application also dies its own death. These are not long living or sustainable changes that we bring about. So in our case, what we are trying to do is we are trying to create a NGO kind of a thing that will manage the application, and the government will only be a dispute resolving agency. So in case there is any dispute that arises eventually, only for those reasons the government will intervene. Otherwise it will be a stakeholder driven thing, where the rewards that are given out will be will be funded by the local traders, local shop owners, shopkeepers. So they will be able to give 5% discount, 2% discount if you cycle 100 kilometers, and so on and so forth. And those, so they will get advertisement, they will get customers, and what we will get is we'll get incentives to we'll be able to incentivize the people to ride more and adopt a healthier lifestyle. So these are the important things that we are trying to do to effectively engage with the citizens at all levels of policy making and implementation of the project, and to try to take them together and create a sustainable change in the ecosystem.
That's right. That's right. That Dr. Apurva was saying that in every aspect of their policies regarding to smart city, citizen engagement and people's participation has played a major role, not only in the implementation stage but also in the planning stage. I'll come back to you, and a lot of initiatives you have referred to, like cycling track, cycling app, the Fit Silvers app, and everything. I'll come back to you on that. We have Mr. Raj Shadubal with us, CEO Chennai Smart City Limited. I'll request Mr. Raj if you can kindly switch on your camera so that we can see you and hear you as well. Mr. Raj, can you hear us? Yeah, I think your mic is unmuted. Yeah. So, Mr. Raj, my question to you would be that what kind of citizen engagement initiative being undertaken by the Chennai Smart City Limited?
So I think it's nice to hear from other cities about all the different things they're doing. I think the problems are common. I think every project we want to communicate, but then the problem becomes there's no data, there is no document. If the architectural diagram exists, it's sitting on somebody's WhatsApp, and every time somebody wants to know what they're going to be doing in a particular place, we again WhatsApp, call each other and ask who has the document. We search for the wrong document, and so on. I mean, so our problems of India are well known, so I'm not going to dwell too much on it. See, communication, everybody talks about communicating to the public, but then just like any other problem of our Indian city, massive, Chennai, for example, has 8 million people, all kinds of people, all kinds of education background, languages, and so on. So the question is, how do you talk to 8 million people? So typically, I think I come from an NGO background, so I can speak from that. We make the mistake of talking to our friends and our fellow activists and a few bureaucrats, and we feel very good that we have communicated well. We exactly told them what we're going to be happening in this project to that project. My obsession always for project or even in this topic is scalability. How do you scale and talk to 8 million people meaningfully, and so that people actually understand and the conversation can be productive. And I'll also tell you the problem statement from earlier NGO times. I personally would stop attending stakeholder meetings because same people will come again and again and same topics will be discussed. And I would have given, let's say, 2 suggestions, and then next time the same question will come up, and it's very obvious that nobody had bothered to, I mean, somebody would have taken notes, obviously, but there's no proof that it actually got translated into anything. I mean, you can tell me that it can't be done, that's fine. Or you tell me why my idea is bad, or you tell me that it has been included, right? So my point is, this is a massive exercise if you think about the whole idea of communication. So that is the challenge we are all facing. So typically any project, obviously we'll have a stakeholder meeting, we'll have consultant, will discuss with the concerned stakeholder, and I can tell you that increasingly the number of stakeholders we talk to, number of interactions we have with the public. For example, when we did the pedestrian plaza, initially there was a lot of opposition because people had no idea what we were doing. So initially we did put up posters, we showed this, showed that, but people weren't convinced because the simple thing was, Corporation Chennai has difficulty doing a simple footpath. How are you going to now block or take away big parts of the road and create this fancy plaza? The people are convinced that the entire place is going to get destroyed and the business are going to get destroyed. I'm sure every other city has faced this challenge. So the communication had to be very intense on the road on a daily basis, sometimes very, not so friendly conversation, sometimes friendly. And as the project went forward, we were able to give more information and because the project kept changing also because, it was one of the big first projects. So a lot of learnings from these examples. So for example, we have put solar panel everywhere. And now unless there are 5 people in the city who know where the solar is, nobody knows that we have done solar, right? Why should you do solar? I mean, today in terms of climate change and so on, we should be communicating how much carbon was saved, etc. So my point I'm trying to make is that among us officials and intellectuals, we know everything. So for example, my C40 friend says, just a few smart city projects have saved a long way, say almost 2 years ago, 2-3% of the carbon, which supposedly is a big deal. They were joking is that if London or Paris had done this, they would have made it sound like they've saved the whole earth 10 times. Even I didn't know that we have done this. Okay, so now that is one problem. The other problem is that with the command and control center, IoT devices, and all kinds of projects that the others also spoke about, whether it is the cycle for change, whether it's a gigantic project, whether it is solar panel or IoT, we are getting flooded with data. And I mean, it's like Americans would say drinking from a fire hose. It's very difficult to even digest what the data that's coming in. So to make things systematic and for selfish reasons. So for example, whether from as a CEO or as a consultant or as an NGO or as a public, we keep running around looking for the same information again and again. Most of the consultants spend most of their days just looking for the information the previous guy had just collected and thrown somewhere in some database or some WhatsApp group somewhere. So command and control, in my opinion, could be one of the foundation of our communication. Because I don't want to sound elitist, but the point is that if the data is in command and control, you can run analytics on it, you can do use cases, so standard operating procedures, etc. And that can all be on the portal. And portal is an elitist thing because, of course, only few people have phones, few people have access to computers. But the thing is, if it's on the portal, you can always take a printout and put it on the ward office bulletin board. Worst come to worst, you can always have kiosks in the ward level. You can have kiosks or digital or papers, put up stuff near the project. The point is that command and control hopefully will be our backbone for communication with the public. And on top of that, for example, the challenges we are facing is that some of the layers of communication. So for example, if you're doing a plaza in some place, you have GIS information. So if some public wants to know where will my water, when it rains, which direction is the water going to flow? Because last year probably they had water logging or flooding there. So environmentalists may want to know, are you going to put new trees there, or are you going to put a fancy species that is not native? Where are the water logging wells going to be? Where is the seating area going to be? Where is the bus stop going to be? Where are the dustbins going to be? Is it going to be in front of my house? If so, I'm not going to allow you. So that from micro communication to bigger communication, that says, look, this is how much carbon we're going to save. This is how we're going to positively impact climate change, and so on and so forth. I think there has to be gigantic tools, big and small, in the system. So some of the systems we are looking at is integration of GIS with our ICCC, so that any architect, any consultant or public should be able to quickly go to the portal, go to the app, city app, for example, and then say, these are things I'm interested in my location, what is happening, what projects are happening, a particular project, what are the details, etc. That's one thing. Then, for example, we are experimenting something called a digital experience center. The idea was simple. Two points. One, let's say today, other than some architect diagram, we are not able to communicate to the public what's going to happen in, let's say, Tondiarpet or Adayar or some of these areas of Chennai. This digital experience center, somebody should be able to walk in and see the present day Chennai and what the future is going to be. What happens when the project is implemented? It could be numbers. So for example, that lamppost is being saving X kgs of carbon because of that solar panel over there, right? Those kinds of communication, or literally infrastructure, like this is how your footpath is going to look like in the future. This is where the tree is going to be. Virtual reality, goggles can be put on, and then you can actually walk through the future Chennai and see various things. So that there's a system called DISOS system. We are experimenting with them to see. They have taken a sample of the ABD area where they have done drone and LiDAR survey. So if you look at the TV screen, it looks as if you're looking at the city itself. It's a rendering from that 3D, which means, so for example, today, if you want to put a security camera, it's just a guesswork. I mean, police will say something, corporation official will say something, and system integrator will put a camera, and then later on we may figure out the coverage is there or not. This system, for example, whether you're a public or an official, you can actually simulate a camera and ask yourself, okay, what is the coverage going to be? If I put the camera in this particular angle, is it good enough, or do I have to change an angle? Do I have to add a new camera? Same thing, you can start saying that this is the contour of the road. When it rains, let's say 10 millimeters, these are the areas where there's going to be flooded. So which means the actual communication with public can become very, very dynamic, very, very vibrant, so that public can actually see what's going to happen. Many of us may not be able to imagine a future 3D because it's very difficult for many people to do. So these tools will drastically change the way we do the work. Then, of course, you can add a lot of layers of other tools, whether it's social media. So my point is that if something is in command and control center, and if there are these tools sitting around the command and control center, how you disseminate this to the public, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're educated, uneducated, children or elderly, that can be customized. And our struggle right now in Chennai, I'm sure other cities are facing the same thing, is to put these systems in place. And luckily for us, World Bank is going to be partnering with Chennai. It's called the City Partnership. They're going to bring up lots of investment into the city. So our point to them also, and our point to the higher officials, has been that most of our projects today, whether it's communication or actual infrastructure, is pure brute force. You shout at each other, you stand on the road and shout at the contractor, shout at the public shouts at you. But this is not scalable. You can't build 1,000 crore itself. It's a major headache. To go to 10,000 crore, 50,000 crore, and do a proper job of these projects, small and big, it is going to take all these different tools from project management. So for communication is also project management, right? So if commissioner asks tomorrow what's happening with that particular project, today, again, people start printing out Excel spreadsheets and wrong data, wrong information, it's not updated. Why not have drones that visit the site and take real-time pictures and say this is where the progress is? You need various project management tools to even communicate to the public and let's say a political leadership to say where does the project stand, what is the deviation, why is it getting late. Same information can be in packaged manner, can be given to the media so that media can scale and tell the public. So my point is, other cities, we are learning a lot from other cities. Very nice to hear from other cities what are the things we're doing, and I'm sure we'd like to kind of implement those things here. Here we are going through the same struggles. But the idea is to put systems so that we can scale. But luckily, I'll conclude by saying that luckily, Chennai, the Greater Chennai Corporation has always had a very good like a suggestion and complaint management system. And there's a 1913, which is the foundation of the corporation, 1913. And if you call that number, many things get done. And under Smart City, we have a very popular app called Namma Chennai app, R Chennai, Namma Chennai app, which is actually very useful because you can take a picture of the problem, load it up, and it goes to the zone and so on and so forth. And the commissioner, deputy commissioners are able to track which problems are there. And that is getting now already got integrated with the command and control. So you can see pie charts and graphs that shows which complaints are coming from which zone and who's clearing the complaints faster and so on. So as like the others said, all these systems need to come together and make life easy for officials to even communicate. Otherwise, officials have difficulty communicating because there's overwhelming information out there. So I'm hoping that already we have improved quite a bit, but long way to go. But with these systems in place, command and control and so on, we should be able to do quite a bit of good work. Thanks.
That was Mr. Raj Sharbul, CEO Chennai Smart City Limited, and I'll come back to Mr. Nitin and also Dr. Apurva and also Mr. Raj. But taking cue from what Mr. Raj has said, that it reminds me of the keynote address yesterday by Sri Durga Shankar Mishra, Honorable Secretary, Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs, Government of India. He said that not only about 100 smart cities, his vision is that all the 4,000 plus cities in India should become smart city. And this kind of knowledge sharing platform actually helps us all to have a knowledge sharing thing happening, so that what is being done in Ahmedabad can be replicated in Chennai, what is being done in Chennai can be replicated in Silvassa, what is being done in Trivandrum can be done in other cities in Kerala itself. And obviously, you referred about the command control center, and Mr. Durga Shankar Mishra talked about how this command control centers have actually played the role of a game changer when it comes to combating the COVID situation. And for 100 smart cities, whatever cities, I think the 30 plus cities where the command control center is ready, they have performed remarkably well in combating COVID-19 situation. And you talked about scalability. I think that's how you make things happen. We make things scalable. Mr. Nitin, I'll come to you. What's your take on what Mr. Raj has said? That one thing is that comprehensive command control center where we can see inflow and outflow of data, but whether that data management, proper management is in place, so that it's all there. But how are we all well equipped in terms of infrastructure to manage this huge data? Mr. Nitin, if you can unmute your mic, please.
Yeah, data management is always a tricky issue. It is not as simple as it may appear from outside. But according to me, what if I go by the topic of this webinar and this conversation, we are talking about citizen service deliveries. There are two parts to that. If the citizen service delivery has to do something with the legacy data, then I think that is a tricky issue, because data sometimes may not be available at all. But in 80 to 90% cases, we can do without the legacy data, and we may collect the data as on the go. For example, if I take one example of fire safety certificates that are given in most of the cities, in Ahmedabad also we face a similar issue, because since the last 40 years, 50 years, we have been issuing those, and there were different regulations at different point of time, and as a result of that, there were different formats in which the information was maintained. But if we decide at one point of time that from now onward we will be giving a service in a particular manner, that citizen engagement can start at any point of time. The legacy data will not be a hindrance in that. It will be a slight nuisance, or maybe it may have slight nuisance value, but it is not as big as to stop you from doing something good in future. So that is my personal point of view. Better we have good data, but at least for citizen services and citizen engagement, it doesn't become a roadblock. I haven't experienced so far. There are many areas. For example, if you want to boost your revenues, yes, definitely in that case you need very reliable data, very accurate GIS information, and which you need to update time and again. But if you want to collect taxes online, and you want to give that convenience to citizen to make applications for changes in the tax details. If you want to transfer the property, in that case you don't have any issues, right? So according to me, it is slightly tricky at times in some areas, but it's not as big as a hindrance that it should prevent the cities from delivering citizen services, or to engage with the citizens. Yeah.
Right, right. Dr. Apurva, your take on that?
I believe what these are both two sides of the same coin. What Nitin has said, what I was saying, these are all interlinked issues. For example, what if I am able to interpret it correctly, what Nitin basically said was, for engaging with citizens, you don't really it does not become that big a hindrance. But if you want to solve issues, then probably individual issues can be resolved easily without legacy data. But what Mr. Raj was saying was basically that how can I prevent these issues from coming up in future? For example, if I am able to analyze data from a particular ward, okay, there are multiple complaints coming time and again with respect to water supply, then I need to probably get the line changed. Okay. And if I get the line changed, I deal with all the issues in future once and for all. So I need to have some sort of access to data so that I can prospectively plan. I can. It basically helps in planning and avoiding grievances from coming up. And moreover, when we go to the citizens often ask, "Why are you doing this?" So if we have data, we can tell them, "See, our decisions are not based on our whims and fancies, on our perceptions. Rather, they are based on data. So, how many buses do I need for Silvassa? Are 25 buses sufficient? Or do I need 37 or do I need 50 buses? How do I make that decision? For that, I have to have data. If I have that data, I'm able to communicate to the citizen. See, this is what UK is, this is what US is. If we improve this, then we'll be able to save so much of carbon. You will be able to go to the, you'll be able to reach your office in so and so time. So every 10 minutes a bus should be available. Why every 10 minutes it should be available? Why not every half an hour? So that all those decisions have to be based on data. So once you have that data, you will be able to give a reasoned answer to these citizens who ask, why are you spending my money on these things? Because at the end of the day, it is citizens money. So I believe for resolving issues, for coming up with solutions, data is desirable. But if it is not there, then also government is different from private sector, especially of its because of its nature, or that we don't know what are the challenges that we are going to face in the next 3 years, 5 years, because of the amorphous nature of the people that we are serving, heterogeneous population, different challenges. So uncertainty is something that characterizes government decision making environment. So what factors will come up, we don't know. So in such uncertainty, we have to take decisions with whatever data it is available with us. And even when it is not available, for example, if there is a flooding in a particular area, we had it last year. We didn't have, we still don't have a integrated command and control center. We still had to do with it. We had to fight that situation. We put men on the ground. We went into physical surveys and all. We dealt with that situation. So government has to deal with situations with or without data. With data, it becomes easier. But even then, what Nitin has said, you'll be able to cater to most of the issues like we have catered it. Preventive aspect is something that we can take into account when we have data with us. For that, what we need to do is we need to have a robust infrastructure. That is, what happens is what Mr. Raja said, data keeps on pouring in. We don't have anyone to look at that data, to analyze that data, to give us meaningful input. So at present, what stage in data evolution, data maturity, where we have reached is we are able to collect data, but we have not reached that maturity where we are able to bring out meaningful, insightful, actionable agenda points. Okay, this is what we need to do. This is what we need to do. This is what the data says. So the basic where we have to convince the policymakers is that we need manpower for analyzing that data, because it seems very, kya karega ye banda ghar pe, he'll just sit and just pour at the data, that's it. So that communication has to go, how important that is there. The institutional setup has to be strengthened. What Mr. Raja said, data is there, but nobody knows where that data is, what, how reliable that data is. So those things have to be worked upon. Yes, that will help us engage with our citizens in a more meaningful way. Plus, what when this the open data platform was created by Smart City Mission, that was a very good initiative, because at times we as government agencies, we don't even need to provide solutions. We just need to give data. People, entrepreneurs, they will look at the data, they will identify a problem statement, and they will come up with a solution just based on the data that you're able to provide. So from that, it can be people driven, it can be private enterprise taking up a problem and solving that issue, and then they make profit also out of it. So those sort of things we should be able to come up with, where data is openly available, but that data has to be, again, privacy concerns have to be addressed. So with those things in mind, we should be not only government data, government decision making, but also what the private entrepreneurs, private parties are taking decisions. This should also be, our data should be available to them also for decision making. That's what I believe.
If I want to take one point as when I we are going to make the event report of this event 3-day conclave, particularly this session, I think we can say that one of the important points which have come out of this discussion is that uh, we all have agreed that we need to analyze data. We have ample number of data, but whether we have the mechanism still there to manage that kind of data, the manpower to manage that kind of data and analyze that kind of data, what Mr. Purva has said right now, and Mr. Nitin also talked about that, and Mr. Raj also talked about that. I think maybe in future course of time, we'll have that kind of way out where we can have people who will be actually there to analyze this huge data for outcome. End of the day, we all need outcome of that data analysis so that that can happen. I'm sure, just to inform all of you and all our delegates, that will be documenting the discussions made on this conclave in various sessions, and we'll be making an event report, which will be presenting to Minister of Housing and Urban Affairs and also to all the stakeholders, so that that document can be referred upon uh, for the future reference that will ensure. Uh, I can see some questions have come from audience, but before I move to audience question part, my one more question I want to ask to all of you, that we're talking about a lot of initiatives, various initiatives. But my question is that, again, coming back to what Mr. Durgashankar Mishra has said that yesterday only in this platform, that end of the day, what we're trying to ensure through Smart City Mission is that getting more out of small and making people's life easy and ensuring livable smart cities. Smart for him, according to Smart City, is that it is livable, sustainable city where people have got ease of living and they got all kind of uh, suvidhas, what he's saying in Hindi. So in that point, I'll quickly come to Mr. Nitin Sangwan, to Raj Shargul and Dr. Purva Sharma. You all are working relentlessly for your own respective smart cities. How importance you have given in the livability factor while you're transforming an old city to a smarter city or making a new smart city? Mr. Nitin.
For a second. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, the very concept of making cities smarter or institutions smarter is to make more citizen friendly, and when we are making them citizen friendly, more accessible, then the whole concept is about making cities livable. If we take the example of the automatic chalaning system and the use of ICCC in doing that, then we are inculcating a traffic sense in people and reducing congestion on the roads and reducing pollution in the city. So the single intervention is actually having a cascading effect on multiple factors of urban living. Similarly, if I talk about other initiative while delivering citizen services in more effective, more transparent, and uh, in a manner that there is less inconvenience, then also we are improving livability factor. People don't need to commute, don't need to come to offices, and they have all the services at the click of a button. If you talk about smart lighting in Ahmedabad, then we are improving efficiency, we are reducing manpower, we are improving illumination, we are then this is having an impact upon crime reduction also, especially the crime against women. We are reducing dark spot, we are reducing accident, and so on. So I can go on and on. I mean, no smart city project is working for its own. It is having some objective, and often when it is designed and when it is adopted, it is done through a very consultative process by which the city political representatives and the various administrative officials, they sit together and they finalize a project. And the ultimate objective of every single project is to improve efficiency of the system, to make services deliver in a more uh, citizen friendly manner. If we have introduced smart parking, then it is easing life of people. They can book the parking slot in advance, and we are at the same time we are also optimizing the parking locations. So the systemic inefficiencies that private companies like Ola and Uber did in terms of transportation, the same thing is being done by our smart parking application. So this is how we are actually improving, because how livability factor improves, then we have to think in this term, can we reduce systemic inefficiencies? I think if we can address this single question, everything else will fall into place. You improve transparency, you give more choices to people if you can give, and that's how I believe things can work and livability factor can improve. Because when things are transparent, when people have trust into system, they also cooperate with you, they don't question. In that case, if you provide an option to citizens that they can report any fault of government or city government, or there is any road which is broken, and it can be redressed in a transparent manner, then I think that's how you are improving livability factor also. And you may say it is an indirect result or whatever, but I believe ki if you win trust of people and if you work together, livability automatically improve, and system works in much better and in much efficient manner.
Mr. Raj, your take on that?
I think Nitin covered pretty much the whole gamut of it. The way I look at it is, every seminar I say the same thing. Like smartness to me is governance smartness, financial smartness, environment smartness, social smartness, ensuring that our the infrastructure is not simply for the rich or the middle class; it's for everybody. Making sure that and it's environmentally smart. No point creating something and then giving people diseases and so on. But I would say, look at it in an even far more simpler way. When you go to a Barcelona or a Paris or a Tokyo or somewhere, you don't really care whether it's called smart, or you're not counting the number of IoTs that's there or number of cameras are there, or you just enjoy the city, right? So I can go with my family, or if you're elderly or child, etc., you just enjoy the place. You go, in fact, you stay in a hotel or somebody's house, you can go to the bathroom, the faucet tap, and take water and drink, and which is shocking for most Indians to even think that that's actually a clean water. You switch on that light and it light comes on. You stand outside, the bus comes on time, and the bus is clean. Metro rail is right there. You don't have to think in terms of TOD or transit oriented this and that, or you have to be a urban planner to figure out how to get to the metro, to the bus. You are right in Hong Kong. When you land there, you get a simple common card. We've been talking about common card forever. For many years ago, Hong Kong had a common card. The first thing you see in the Hong Kong airport is the metro rail, not a car, not a bus, not a cycle, metro rail. It's hardly 10 meters from the airport's window, door. That's how they're planning, so that I don't have to think what is smartness. I just enjoy the city, I enjoy my life there, and there are rules and regulations. There are enforcement. Enforcement doesn't mean holding a poster on the side of the road and saying, drive smart or be nice and all that. There are actual enforcement, like what Nitin pointed out, whether it's through parking management, whether it's through camera, challaning system, which is smooth, so that if I obey and behave like a regular normal citizen, I don't have to worry about these things. But if you're going to mess up and do bad things, you have to deal with the system. So my point is, I think that's the job of the smart city, to ask ourselves, what is a simple life of a simple citizen, and use other sophisticated and simple things. I mean, everything doesn't have to be sophisticated, everything doesn't have to be high tech. It could be simple concrete and steel infrastructure, or sophisticated data analytics, artificial intelligence, whatever it may be. Use these tools to achieve that simple objective that other citizens of other cities are doing. So I'll just conclude by saying, like, a few years ago, my engineers and I and all, we went to Paris, and this engineer was saying, I'm going to go study this and I'm going to study that. I'm going to look at the stormwater drain. I said, Bob, don't do all that. You just sit in the side of the road and drink chai or beer or whatever you like, right? And simply ask yourself, how come an Indian Chennaiite is not able to do this in Chennai without the smoke, without honking, without people trying to run over you with a car? I mean, if the Paris guy, rich or poor or a tourist or a foreigner, can sit and drink a simple chai in the side of the road without getting killed or disturbed or annoyed, that is quality of life. Why can't we do that same thing? I crave for that in Chennai, right? So I think we need to be able to translate those simple actions that human want into behind the scene, maybe sophisticated. That's I mean, technocrats and bureaucrats and others have to worry, NGOs and all have to worry about how to do it. And lastly, I would say that's where I think we don't have 100 years to sit back and think like Paris. This is where all these sophisticated tools and data and all hopefully will help us leapfrog, because we don't have the time and energy and the money and the resources to spend the way they have spent. But let's use all these sophisticated tools and analysis and whatnot to be able to leapfrog. But ultimately, let's not lose sight of what the average citizen wants. It is not camera or IoT. It's like Nitin and others pointed out. It's just simple life, good life, environmentally, socially, and other ways nice. Thank you.
Dr. Apurva Sharma, you take on that.
Well, what I agree with what Nitin and Raj have said. I would, and obviously what our Secretary Sir has said. I just like to add that, when we talk about livable cities, ultimately it is like everything that we do, the government administration. It is administration itself means, you have to take care of the people. So all our actions are at the end of the day aimed at making the life of the citizens more comfortable, easier, and livable. So that's what Nitin said, and I agree with that. The only thing that I feel is that what we should do to make it livable, we have to take a wholesome view at it. What happens in our cities, our administrations is we are always having we are working in silos. So an integrated approach to the life of a citizen is not usually taken. The society as a whole is not taken. Like, for example, if you look at what our funds under JNNURM was spent for, a lot, a much higher percentage of funds was spent on flyovers as compared to what was spent for public buses. So if you have more buses on road, then you have less vehicles on road. Your requirement for flyovers decreases, and all those things are, modal shift happens, and those are the things that happen. But our priorities, our planning, it is directed towards not the entire whole. Rather, it is directed towards your immediate issues, what problems you are facing. Those things we need to address. We need to go about, like, for example, Mumbai has not added any significant local train tracks. Those tracks are being used over and over. You hear about new roads being built, widening of roads, but have you ever heard Mumbai metro, Mumbai local, it is being expanded, new track is being laid? No, it is not being done. You have around, I think the coastal road project is 15,000 crore rupees worth. For how many vehicles? I think 60,000 vehicles are going to use it on an average every day, which is a very small number. For the same number, you can have, around 18,000 crore or 12,000 crores, you can have a metro line on the same route, which will be used by lakhs of people every day. What are our priorities? Where are they placed? Whom are we catering? You're making life livable for whom? So we don't look at the entire whole. We are addressing the certain sections of the society, certain issues of the society. So to make them livable, what Mr. Raj has said, you know, the government, you should not feel the presence of government if the government is actually functioning well. So like a citizen should not. What happened in my household, it was like somebody said, okay, what do you people do as administrators? I said, we do this, we do that, we do this, we do that. So my relative said, I'm not able to make out what you people do. It's not very clear. So I just told her that we are very important people. So he said, if you people are so important, then why did I never need to meet anyone of your kind? So that shows that in that particular city, the governance is working fine. You don't have to go to meet anyone. You don't have to approach anyone. You don't need to know people to get things done. That is what livability is all about. You don't have to worry about what are the rules, what are these, that. You just, the services should come to you naturally. It should be default option. It should not be something that you have to struggle for. So that is what is a livable city, where the presence of government is felt to the minimum. And you know, because what we realize, when we miss out on something, we need government. So you should not miss out on anything, so that you don't require the need of a government in such places. That is what I feel our aim should be, to make cities more livable.
That's wonderful. So I can see that me, along with all the delegates present here today, can see that Mr. Nitin Sangwan, CEO Ahmedabad Smart City, Raj Sherbil, CEO Chennai Smart City Limited, and Dr. Apurva Sharma, CEO Silver Smart City Limited, not only highlighting various initiatives being undertaken in their cities, but also giving a holistic and practical perspective when we talk about building smart cities, when we talk about building livable cities. And Mr. Dr. Apurva has said rightly that uh, smart governance can ensure livable smart cities. And government should not be seen that they're doing this governance work. More we see that, we can feel more that governance is happening, smart governance is happening, and that will lead to smart building, smart cities, and smart way of living life. As Mr. Ashwini was telling that, end of the day, if you are visiting a city, you should enjoy the city, and you can all and seamlessly you can avail all kind of facilities there. And I'm sure Mr. Nitin Sangwan, Mr. Raj Sharubal, and Dr. Apurva Sharma is trying to ensure that in their own work sphere, in their own those cities. Surprisingly, I've got many questions, but I think what Dr. Apurva was saying about smart governance, I'll just take one question because we don't have much time. One question quickly, 1 minute to all of you. You were talking about smart governance and less of government for sustainable cities and everything. So I can see one question has come that they're asking that, is the smart city mission in government of India, by government of India, uh, uh, can be held as same as what e-passport has done for e-governance in India, making citizens' life easier. So that what he's trying to ask is that, do you think that smart city mission is one of the most important factors in recent history, recent time of India in last 10, 15 years for urban transformation, 5 years down the line? So what they're asking that, what Passport Seva has done through using technology and e-governance to making people's life easy to get obtain a passport, is or will smart city mission is ensuring that for urban transformation in India? Quickly, 1 minute each to Mr. Nitin Sangwan, Raj Sharubal, and Dr. Apurva. I'll start with Mr. Nitin.
I think it depends, because unlike the e-passport seva, whatever is they have done so far, that is, I appreciate that what has been done so far. They had a very single objective, but in smart city we have to take our own problem statements and then we have to work upon them. So it all depends upon what city has prioritized. Some cities have focused on citizen service delivery. Some other cities have focused upon building infrastructure. So it all depends. Uh, I can definitely say maybe some changes are not visible and to the citizens. For example, if I take the example of ICCC, Then in case of every city, almost 20 to 25% of the funds must have gone into this a single project, right? And it has translated into behavioral change also in some cases. For example, in Ahmedabad, under the Safe and Secure Ahmedabad, we have introduced traffic cameras at more than 130 junctions. So if you are in Ahmedabad and if you have stayed in Ahmedabad 5 years back, then definitely you can see that change, and you will be able to appreciate that. And similarly, in terms of citizen delivery, if I say, many cities have taken ERP projects for their corporations and have made many citizen services online in a similar manner that passport has been done, the e-governance part. So that is also happening in many cities, including in Ahmedabad. We are also trying to do that. But I think it all depends upon the priorities that a city has set for itself and the kind of visible change that you will see from that. Uh, it will depend whether you are a user of that or not.
Mr. Raj, quickly, 1 minute to you.
Yeah, sure. So I think if the question is if the analogy, if the city is the passport, and earlier passport was painful to get and very difficult to get and cumbersome. Today it's relatively speaking very easy and very surprisingly easy and so on. If that is the question, then yes, our attempt should be to that. Like what Nathan pointed out, it's a complicated system that we have. But the attempt, passport is just a slice. So if you take water just simply as water, today I get bubble top at home. I would like to someday be able to open my tap and just drink the water without worrying about diseases and so on. So if passport is an analogy, then yes, water is like should become like passport service, electricity and so on and so forth. The attempt should be to, like Apurva pointed out, people shouldn't have to feel the presence of government to drink water or to breathe clean air. It should be so smooth and automatic, and like they've done in Ahmedabad, nobody has to stand on the side of the road and teach me how to drive and stop at a red light, because system has kind of gently taught me that if you better stop here, you'll be fine. If you don't stop, you'll have trouble. So I think the systems in fall in place so that city like the passport service should become, yes, much more efficient and much more easier, so people can focus on the real things in life and not worry about paperwork and red tape and so on and so forth.
Thanks. Dr. Apurva, quickly, 1 minute to you.
In this
And I
regard,
think that question was more of analogy, just for example, maybe. I think that's what the delegate wanted to ask.
one of the important thing in this regard, yes, we aspire to emulate what passport has done, or the Ministry of External Affairs has done for the passport in our various services that we offer. uh, but we are more than that. So one important thing that is there is, we when we talk about smart cities, we are not talking only about technologies, what Mr. Raj had said. We are also intervening in smart does not mean technology driven. It means it could be simple, something very simple. So you when you build a smart road, it basically does not allow the water to accumulate on it. It provides you good surface to go. It provides a safe pedestrian pathway, all those things. So it need not be tech savvy. So technology need not be a part of everything that we do. Yes, we aim to make cities so livable, so easy to live. Just like your passport, it becomes hassle free. You don't need to know anyone. You don't need to approach anyone. It gets done automatically. Yes, we aim at that. The only thing is that when we aspirations never end. So the journey of development has only commas. It does not have any full stop. So when we achieve this after 5 years, we'll be striving to achieve more for the next 5 years. So this it's smart city mission is never going to end. This journey has only just begun, and we are only going to go farther and higher from there.
That was nice. I think I'll take this one line to end this session, that journey of development should not have full stops, only should have commas, and aspiration, and aspire to become number one in terms of building livable smart cities of future. That aspiration, that the journey of hunger should always be there, and there should not be any full stop. Only commerce can be there. Thank you so much, Dr. Apurva Sharma, CEO Silvers Smart City Limited, Mr. Nitin Sangwan, CEO Ahmedabad Smart City Limited, and Mr. Raj Shirbal, CEO Chennai Smart City Limited, not only giving accounts of what kind of work being done in your respective cities in terms of smart city domain, but also giving a practical, pragmatic approach and perspective on the present and the future of building smart cities in India. And I'm sure the delegates who are present here has taken note of that. And when we are going to document this discussion, and we are going to circulate this discussion with all the stakeholders, there will be an action taken on that. Thank you so much again, Nitin Sangwan, Raj Sharubal, and Dr. Apurva Sharma for joining us in this session on effective citizen engagement initiatives, best practices, innovation, and technologies in APEC Smart and Sustainable City Conclave, organized by APEC News Network and hosted by Thiruvananthapuram Smart City Limited. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.